Hi everybody, Rob Dominic here, MLTI ambassador, and we're going to continue. Excuse me. We're going to continue our PD series on effective technology integration. If you tuned into the first one or you saw it asynchronously, you kind of saw the series outline of what we're going to be digging into. Initially, we just talked about overall landscape of how technology affects the classroom and education, kind of some basic things there, but still just interesting parts I thought to point out to you. And it sets the stage for the rest of our PD series here and kind of got into the why I'm presenting what I am and why I think there's a need for it. So if you haven't checked it out, feel free to go back and click on the series outline. It'll take you to the YouTube playlist of where it is. And you can also go get those recertification credit hours for that. We're on to topic 2, week 2 of this, where our title is digging into TPACK and SAMR, two of these models that kind of start getting the wheels turning about technology integration in the classroom, and kind of have turned into the kind of the foundational pieces that are usually start with introducing technology integration and the thoughts behind it. They've come to be two of the basic ones, not the only ones we're going to discuss, but it's a good starting off point. All right. So our agenda, what we're going to be looking at today then is kind of what we just mentioned, that we're going to be looking about how technology blends with the classroom and the teacher's content, as well as the teacher's style and strategies within the class. And that's kind of our TPACK, what that's going to present us. And then we're going to examine, how technology can be used at different depths when it's integrated into the classroom. It's not every technology resource is treated the same, and it's not integrated the same way. And we're going to look at one way, the SAMR model, about how you can kind of judge how technology is used in the classroom and the various ways and depths that it can be done. So first, our TPACK model. It is an acronym. That's where it comes from, with the T, first part being the technological knowledge. So the whole idea of this is that you're encompassing the whole picture of a teacher's classroom beliefs, strategies, all together, and making it into one diagram here. So technological knowledge is what is your knowledge of just technology by itself. How do you use it? How do you navigate? You make accounts. What are the strengths of technology? What are some vulnerabilities of it? Just in general, how do you know technology by itself? Then you get into the pedagogical knowledge part, the P in the TPACK. And this is like the core of the educator part. This is who the educator is, their beliefs of the classroom management, how to handle assessments, formal and informal, how to get classroom discussion going, how to interact with students, all of those pieces that just go around the navigating the classroom and the day-to-day operations of it. And finally, you've got the content knowledge, the C in there, and this is where you start to blend in the actual education and the curriculum part of the teacher's philosophies and how they work with that. So it's the teacher understanding the scaffolding to their curriculum, what's appropriate for their age level, what they should be working on for students, helping them. That's just that core piece of it. Again, so these are all right now separate from each other in this Venn diagram. Those are the three headings, and I think those are pretty accurate. Though, if you're thinking about the typical classroom, typical teacher, these headings kind of take care of all the different categories that could go in there. I would say the only one that's kind of missing there is potentially, school-wide interaction with admin, things like that. I mean, that could potentially fall under pedagogical knowledge. But that's, to me, that's just more of the instructional piece. But this is a pretty good snapshot of the teacher's classroom environment. Maybe not outside of that with everything else in that school building, but the classroom environment itself that the teacher controls. So as those three parts blend together, you start getting the various combinations of the acronyms. Technological, pedagogical knowledge. So now here you are combining How does technology help the teacher's beliefs and how things should be run in the classroom? Is there, like Google Classroom, right? The workflow, how they're handing out work to students and the expectations with that. How are you going to facilitate classroom discussion, with technology? How are you going to organize work on your assessments? You're gonna be able to have digital presentations to them, or is it gonna be paper only? Those types of things. How do you manage all that together with technology? On the other side, you've got the technological content knowledge. So this really kind of goes with the idea that technology is supposed to enhance the content. So what's your knowledge about that? The teacher's knowledge about how does technology build the content, change it, enhance it, make it more engaging? How does it interact with the content that you want to present to the students? Then the combination down here, the PCK, this is kind of your almost everyday classroom environment, minus the technology. So just your normal everyday piece of working with students, trying to get them to understand the content. What assignments do you have for them? How do you manage that? How do you have them talk about the curriculum and the subjects that you're working with them? That's that PCK, pedagogical content knowledge piece. Again, it's just without the technology. Now you might have projectors involved, something like that, simple. But technology isn't really the core piece of it. You're not really using that to enhance a lot of parts to it. You're really just focused on the pedagogical strategies and the content that goes with it. But as you blend all of them together, then you get the full TPACK, technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. So that centerpiece, kind of ends up being in the middle here with that Venn diagram. There's my cursor. There we go. And I think it's kind of appropriate that it's in the center there, because I do think that this becomes the core to a teacher's classroom environment. Odds are every teacher has aspects of each one of these that need to blend together well in order to make things effective and efficient, and impactful for the students. So taking your technological knowledge, how is it going to help with your pedagogical piece of your strategies with students, and how is it going to enhance the content all together? That's your perfect blend. That's your ingredients to mix together that perfect classroom environment. Perfect is a loose term, I would say there. It's hard to say perfect in education, but for the teacher's standpoint, how does that all blend together well enough to feel like it's making a difference in the classroom, not just mixing it together for the sake of just having it there. As we move on here, some sources kind of summarized for you from the tpack.org website, talking about each one of these knowledge pieces, sections. So, content knowledge, again, you're understanding the scope and sequence of the content and understanding where things are supposed to go and how to scaffold that for the students. Pedagogical, you're doing the classroom strategies that you have for teaching, kind of like your philosophy of teaching. How is that all going to interact with your classroom? And then really the technology becomes the support. And that's kind of how it should be, right? Technology should be the support for the content and pedagogy that you bring to the classroom. It's not really its own piece ever. I mean, if it is its own piece, it's not really integrated in the classroom. It's just you interacting with it and feeling comfortable with it. To have technology actually be effective or have a place in the classroom, it has to blend with the pedagogy and content. It has to enhance things, or it should enhance things. It should not be a struggle that you have to overcome. It should just naturally blend in. Now, doesn't mean you're not going to struggle at times in order to learn a topic or learn a resource, but it just means that once it comes to actually using it in the classroom, it should flow nicely. Then you've got the overlapping parts, right? So your pedagogical content knowledge considers the everyday practices that a teacher has, and you combine it with the actual instruction that needs to happen. This is your everyday classroom planning, right? And that you might throw in technology every now and then into it. Your TCK, right? Again, combining that content with technology, making sure you're choosing things correctly that will help you with your curriculum. And your TPK, again, making sure you're choosing technology that helps you achieve your goals with the students and having them engage and interact with the content instead of just having the technology separate and not really focused on the goals. Then after all of that, again, back to the TPACK. Okay, so some summary points for it. You want it to be effective and efficient with a combination of all three of those categories. This should be the strong basis. This should be the core piece of teaching. Think about a typical classroom. You have aspects of all of these being involved almost daily, right? Again, maybe technology isn't a daily piece, even though it's maybe pretty frequent, but it's still going to be there. It's still going to be on your mind. So you're going to look to integrate it effectively whenever possible. So that leads us to the next piece here. What about tech resources? Right? What about those technology pieces that you want to use and integrate into the classroom? How do we make sure that it's going to integrate smoothly? How do we make sure that it's going to achieve the goal that you want it to? You can't always just throw it out there and be like, oh, here, we're going to use this to practice math concepts and hope for the best. I mean, it might work, right? You could just have digital worksheets for them and say, here, we're just going to do this digitally instead, and you still achieve what you wanted to because of that. But then you got to ask yourself, why go digital at that point? What's the benefit of it? And that's what we can kind of look at next here is the technology resources and evaluating them for their benefits and how they're going to be used so that they do assimilate into your classroom pedagogy and content beliefs. So whatever tech resource you're going to choose, right, think about how it's going to be integrated. All of these could be integrated in a variety of ways. I mean, these are just a few examples, of course. Google Docs, you can always just have them write on a Google Doc as opposed to writing it by hand. Okay, that's fine. But then what else can you do with it? What's the next level that you can go with it so that it's making a more of an impact for your students and for your curriculum? Same thing for things like IXL, right? They could do math work on there. They could do different subject work on there, get their answers right or wrong. But then what? Yes, it helps organize and, have all their assignments in one spot and help track it. But then using that data to inform instruction can be the next piece of it, right? So you think about what else can it do for you as opposed to just that one piece and that's it, right? Thinking back to the first topic, the first PD session that we ran here, we talked about flaws with technological engagement with students and how it's the number one reason surveyed for teachers that they feel technology impacts their classroom. But there's a pretty big issue with that, possible issue with that if you're just looking for engagement from students, because engagement does not always mean they're interacting with the content and they're working towards the learning goals. Okay, there are some great tech resources out there. Hoop, honestly, is one that's fun. It's a fun game. It's fine. But how is it being used? Because if it's just for some quick quizzes, like I don't like it for math anymore. I did it for a little bit, honestly, but I just didn't like the feeling that I was getting when students were doing it to as a fun way to review math concepts. Because you start to see students just guess, or they look at other people's answers, or they just worry about getting it quick. And it wasn't aligning to what I wanted them to do with the math piece. I did not want to train them that they had to be quick in math in order to be perceived as good or smart with it. Now, again, it used a different way or used in other ways. That's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad tool at all. I'm just saying you have to kind of be mindful of what engagement means versus the actual learning piece of it. And what are you getting from it as the teacher end as well? How is it informing your instruction? How is it enhancing your instruction? And how is it enhancing the students' understanding of the concepts? Right. So we're going to keep this in mind throughout the whole series, right? Engagement. We have to not just engage the students. That's a good starting point, right? You got to engage them initially, but once we've got them on that hook for those moments, how can we then broaden it out even more and enhance the content for them after they're hooked onto it? So that's where the SAMR model comes in. One of the models that come in anyways is a good one to know to introduce. And it was established back, well, it was introduced anyways in 2006. It was established prior to that by Dr. Ruben Quintentera. And it was actually, a little fun fact there, it was actually introduced in 2006 in response to the MLTI initiative that began in 2002, with that main being one-to-one as a way to understand and help integrate technology at deeper levels instead of just that simple write this paper on digitally as opposed to by hand. So it came to light, came to be popular starting back in 2006, and has still become one of the basic fundamental models that we can talk about that are out there for technology integration. And you can see the acronym over here goes with substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Those are the various ways that he decided that technology could be integrated, and the different levels of it. And you see many charts with it. Many charts that kind of depict this tiered approach to integrating technology. So you have substitution, augmentation in the enhancement category, and then transformation, the modification, and redefinition area. Substitution, again, it's a simple exchange of a tool. You're doing something digitally that probably could be done by hand, a math worksheet done digitally, PDF or something, or typing on a Google Doc instead of writing by hand. That's that piece of it. Now, augmentation, that means that something starts to, there's a reason for why you did that, not just a straight change or switch for it, but there's a reason why you have it done digitally. They can turn it in digitally. Okay, that helps you with your workflow. That's valid. They can spell check, right, with it. Now, that to me, that's more of an augmentation piece. That might be starting to border in modification, right? Some of this stuff is a gray area, but that to me, that's not a significant task redesign. It's a helpful tool as opposed to having to look up words in the dictionary or something. Then modification you do, right? Significant task redesign, so that Google Doc that they're working on, they can then share it with a friend and they can collaborate together. Again, to me, that's a significant redesign because it's not redefinition. It's not changing the game completely because they could do that next to each other. But it does add to that functionality of technology and the goal of the assignment. And then finally, redefinition. So this is like, without technology, this assignment could not exist at all. So you're taking that writing and you're going to make a digital book, right? You're going to have them create. You're going to make them make a Google Slides comic animation about a story, right? That's redefining at that point. You're using Google Maps or Google Earth to have them explore and come up with area of land and figuring out cost for gardening, of their yard that they look up on Google Maps, something to that effect. Where without it, the assignment could not even exist, right? And that's why this is in the transformation section here, right? Things start to transform, whereas here they're improved for whatever goal. As I mentioned, you will see many different graphics showing about SAMR model. There are plenty out there. You got this one here. It gets bigger as you go, and the guiding questions for it. Here, you've got it straight across, but you've got how it's compared to different types of coffee, where they get more fancy as you go, culminating in the pumpkin spice for the redefinition. So I'm guessing if you're a pumpkin spice fan in the fall, then you're all for that, which is valid, right? That is pretty good come fall time. So it's giving you that sense that the further up or the further down the line that you're getting more rich with the technology integration. Often you will see a little stair model. Sometimes this is reversed with substitution on the bottom and redefinition at the top, like you're climbing up. This one, looks like you're starting at the top here with the initial substitution, the initial interaction with the technology, and you are going down and getting deeper as you walk down to the basement or something, and you're going deeper into it. All of those are fine, right? There's plenty out there. There's so many other ones that you could look at and see. Whatever works for you. There are a couple in particular that I like better than others, and these would be a couple of them. I like this one probably the most to start with because it acknowledges the fact that no tech is an option as well. That there's still effective possibilities without technology. And then it shows the idea that you're just going deeper with the technology usage. And it doesn't give that impression, in my opinion, that like you have to climb the stairs. You have to be at the highest point if this was reversed, or they have to be at that certain point in order to be effective with the technology. Because you don't, honestly, you don't always have to be in the redefinition section. It's great when you can throw those in, again, depending how it's used. If you're throwing that in and you're making students having some like authentic learning experiences with it, then yeah, that's going to be a pretty powerful lesson or assignment. And it's probably going to go well because kids will be engaged and they'll be getting knowledge out of it. But you don't have to live there all the time, right? Most likely you're going to be swimming back and forth between these ones, right? Probably a little bit more towards the augmentation and modification piece because, a straight substitution, odds are it's at least benefiting you as a workflow piece, and that's why you're going digital, so you can handle it that way. So that bumps it to the augmentation piece. So I just like this model that shows you're kind of swimming at different depths and different levels. You don't have to climb the mountain. You don't have to climb to the top and be at that one spot all the time. You don't have to have that rich pumpkin spice drink all the time. You can have the straight black coffee every now and then because that serves a purpose and there's no need to try to force it. This one over here, obviously this is the kind of the first picture that we saw a little bit ago. So, that's pretty basic to me, but I do like the fact that this graphic points out the association with the blooms. Because that is the downfall to the SAMR model, is that you could have a piece of technology redefining how it's used, the task for the students and how the technology is used. That doesn't necessarily mean that students are getting a lot out of it or that they are going, and creating with that technology. A lot of times it does, but there's still possibilities. Again, if you're showing them images on a Google map about something, that's great. And if you are in front of them and you are just showing them the city plan of, the layout of a city for city planning, that's cool. And you can kind of zoom in and see the different buildings, right? That's impossible. Right? Even if you had a regular map, you wouldn't be able to see it like that. That's great. But again, the students didn't do anything in that case. They didn't really get that much out of it. They weren't creating or digging into it themselves. So it all depends how it's being used. And that's where I think just this association with Bloom starts trending towards that idea of how the technology is going to impact the student as well, besides just the use of it. And that's why we've got the next week's session as well about the different types of alternative strategies that are out there, because they do start to address the the impact on the student part of it. But I do like this because, again, odds are if you're going to the redefinition level, students should be evaluating or creating at that piece. They should be having something deeper that they are doing with it as well, the higher on the blooms. Modification, you've got that middle tier, and then substitution, that's basically kind of like remembering, augmentations, understanding. Again, it's not a perfect correlation, but it does start to incorporate those ideas of blooms and how things are being used. So I like that part of it, that it gets those wheels turning, because they're wheels here, huh? So anyways, I like that part of it, and that's what I want people to keep in mind as well. Again, SAMR is a great starting piece. It's a great model to keep in mind as you're integrating technology, but I don't think it can be just by itself anymore, with where we are with technology here in 2022. Just a kind of quick snapshot of resources that are out there. This is from Mr. Oris Tech site, the SAMR model that I just modified a little bit because I added some other pieces and kind of rearranged some of the icons on the grid, or added some to it that I wanted to include, because no SAMR model matrix or diagram is going to be perfect, right? Things are going to be, phased out. Google Explorer is gone. Google Expeditions is gone. It's never going to be perfect. And again, a lot of it depends on how you use the tool. I can use Google Slides as a straight substitution and just have them make a digital, poster or whatever. But again, if I'm having them create animations and retelling stories on there, and having characters embedded and all that, then I'm bumping up this SAMR model with it. It's not just a straight substitution anymore. But it at least gives you a framework, gives you an idea of possible resources and where they would lie on the SAMR model if you just use them at face value. But again, a lot of it has to do with how you, as the teacher, use it in the classroom. And that's, technology is not going to replace the teacher because of that. You're going to need the teacher to introduce the technology, to use it in different ways, to get the kids thinking with it. It's never going to be a silver bullet for education just to have one resource or app or website that works for everything. Not going to happen. But again, it's a framework to kind of look at and keep in mind. There are other ones out there as well. There's like this big circle one with a whole bunch of different colors on it, that deal with apps and how they could be used, and it kind of incorporates blooms as well. Whatever you find, it's a good resource as a reference. It's not the end-all be-all, again, because things change so much, and it depends what fits into your classroom. But it's there as a resource to look at. So again, kind of going back to that idea of it all depends on how you use technology, right? If we have a projector and slideshows, which are fairly modern, right, into the classroom, fairly recent, that seems great. But if you're still using that to just show a slideshow of information for students, it's really no different than these simple overhead projectors that we used to have, right? You're just putting transparency on there one by one, just like you're clicking through the slides, even though you've got a much more expensive mounted projector and then the slideshow software to go with it, as opposed to the now considered low-tech overhead projector with transparencies, right? And I would say if you use these transparencies and you have kids overlay their diagrams of something, the classic animal cell diagram comes to mind, where they can overlay it on another piece and bring all their pieces together. Now you're enhancing this technology to more than just a substitution as well, and this would be stuck at a substitution if you're just using it to display information, right? So again, depends how the technology is used. And that's what the SAMR model kind of wants you to start thinking about. And that's where we're going to continue thinking about with our sessions here, our PD sessions, is digging into those mindsets. how can we use technology at different levels, and how does that align with our classroom strategies so that students get the most out of it, they're engaged, it's enhancing the content, the students are working towards the learning goals of the curriculum, and really kind of bringing it all together. Now, you don't have to, kind of go through this, especially the TPACK model. You don't have to go through that every time you're thinking about using technology. It's really just a way to reflect, right? To reflect on yourself and your classroom usage of the content, pedagogy, and technology all coming together, right? You're looking to think about that and just evaluate yourself and kind of see how are things blending together. Keep those things in mind. Same thing with the SAMR model, right? You're just thinking to yourself, right, what am I getting out of this? What level am I using this technology at? I haven't done a lesson in a while that's really kind of used the redefinition level of technology. Maybe I can dig into something and find some PD or resources to help with that, and I can kind of get some big engagement piece for the students to work on. You're just kind of reflecting and keeping that in mind, so that way you can integrate it as best as possible that aligns with your own curriculum piece. Okay, so hopefully you've gotten good information here, a background on TPACK and SAMR. That was the goal for today, to give you that background on it. We're going to continue on with this PD series with digging into other strategies and other frameworks next week, besides just these two basic ones. And then after that, we'll be able to kind of synthesize all of them. After we've just learning about the facts on it, we're kind of doing an objective viewpoint of them, of what they offer and what they look like. We'll then pull it all together and pull the best pieces and evaluate which one works and which one doesn't, or what you like most about one and not the other, so you can have a better idea for your own personal classroom and your own personal feelings about how technology is going to work for you and what model works best in order to integrate it. So I remind you that you can get to our PD series with all the other offerings as well. Eric with student engagement on Tuesdays, Jonathan with digital citizenship and online safety on Wednesdays, Kate with digital instruction design on Thursdays, and then Holly with active learning on Fridays. You can find all those links on the calendar at the maine.gov MLTI site. If you have any questions or anything else, feel free to contact me, robert.dominic@maine.gov. You can find a YouTube playlist over here, and then of course there's a forum link down at the bottom in order for you to click on to get just fill out some quick information about the session, and then for you to get your recertification contact hours. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.